My name is Michael and welcome to a GTK object tutorial, or better say a GObject tutorial. At this point we learn about functions and macros like GObject type, GType is object, as well as GObject type name, and also we saw what's the story with GObject set and GObject get, and now we know when and how we need to cast and how to check if the object we pass it is indeed the object which we needed. And now it is time to move on, and today I'm going to introduce you to three new functions, which they are called GObject set data, GObject get data, and GObject steal data. Now let us see what's the story with these three functions, and I'm going to scroll down to find them, and there it is. As you can see, the GObject set data, it is a function which takes three parameters. The first one is the object, the second one is the name of the key, and the third one is the data associated with the key. Well, the description says each object carries around a table of association from strings to pointers. So this function lets you to set an association. If the object already has an association with that name, the association will be destroyed. So it's better for you to remember that if you give the same name again, then you lose the old one. This is the same thing, or the same analogy like when you declare a pointer in your C language, and then after you call malloc, and once that you call malloc to get some memory, instead of read that pointer, you point your pointer to something else, or maybe you call it malloc again. You have a memory leak because you lose the connection between the pointer and the memory location which was reserved or provided for your through that pointer. Something like this happens also here. You will see. Anyway, GObject set data. Okay, what exactly means? It means, in other words, that you can create a connection between two objects, if I can explain like this. But before I call those functions, let me show you something. I made some changes from the last video, which means I'm going to compile it and run it first for you. It's nothing special. It is just a window which has a grid inside it with two objects. The first one, it is a button which says click, and the second one, it is a label which says click the button to remove the label. So basically now when I'm going to click the button, I just remove the label, and if I click it again, it will rebuild. What I did, well, like I said, I create a grid, I create a button, a label, I put those two buttons and label inside the grid, and I'm monitoring the button. It's a click-it signal, and if something happens, if someone clicks the button, it will be the click-it callback called, and I'm passing the label. The click-it callback, as you can see, I have it right here. It expects a GTK button and a GTK widget label. I'm checking against those two by checking G is object button and GTK is label. You see, I'm calling different checks because no matter which one you choose, both they will be fine, but I'm strongly suggest you to call the right one, which means you should call GTK is button instead, because this is basically the macro which actually belongs to your button. So GTK is button on the button because we have a GTK button, and GTK is label on label because because we have a widget, but the widget type, it is a label as well. So no matter which you call, at least you should call the much more appropriate for its type. Anyway, and then I have declared a static Boolean flag which use false. And then because it's false, I'm hiding by calling GTK widget hide the label and set the flag to true. And once that this function is called again, and because it was first time set to false and we were setting it to true, it will be ignored this part, and then it will be called the GTK widget show label and sets the flag again to false. And basically this is what this function does once that you click the button. It's hiding and showing the button. But I want to show you something. I want to make some changes to this program so that you see the the powerful functions like GObject set data, get data, and steal data, and so on. Anyway, for this I'm going to call this function, and at this point I'm going to set the connection. So better say, let me not again, not here, here. Okay, so GObject set data, it said the first one is the object, so as you can see it is a GObject, which means we need a GObject. So GObject is the cast which we need to, and then of course we need to create a connection, and for this, if I now use the button, I need to make a connection with someone through this button. But no, me, I'm doing at this point something else, and I'm going to of course, now you know what, now I'm going to let it like this. So I'm going to make a connection, I'm going to give a name, and I'm going to say label data. I'm explaining in a second, and of course the label. So what I'm doing right now, I'm saying like this: make a connection between the label and the button, and at this point when the connection exists, it should be identified by a key, and this key, it should be the label data string. So basically, once that I need to deal somehow or for some reason with this label, I need to call GTK object get data, and if I pass this key, which I set it now, like label data, whatever which name you give is not important, then with the help of GObject button, basically we can manipulate the label outside the function where were declared. So at this point, as you can see, label belongs to main. This means we need to pass it so that we can work with it. But we are not going to work with label at all. We are going to work only with the button, and you will see how you will retrieve the information from the button so that you can work with the label. For this, I'm going to make some changes. So the gsignal connect, which works with the button and with the label, this time I'm going to change, and I'm going to pass the grid just to show you that they are not the label. It's not going to be used in the gsignal connect at all. Me, I'm passing the grid and the button and not the label. Me, I'm only setting the connection between the label and the button, specifying this key. But this is another story. So now, of course, we need to make some changes, which means now I need to create a GTK grid. You see, I'm changing also the parameter here, and once that I change it, like here, I'm going to say GTK is grid, and of course the grid, and I'm going to remove the label. You see, now we have, what do we have now? We have the button and we have the grid. We have no label. At this point, if I compile it and run it, we'll get a lot of problem because we have no label. You see, okay, so it's not working. No problem. Now it is time to see what's the story with the other function. The GObject get data says gets a name field from the objects table of association. So GObject set data, we saw it. So at this point, we need the object and the key. The key which we were setting it was label data. This is the name or of the key which we decide to use it. And it says return the data if found. If not, or null it in such data exists. Okay, so data if found, or not null if no such data exists. In other words, we are going to create a widget, GTK widget. We will declare it, of course, a label, because we need to work with a label. And now we are going to call this function. And you remember the difference between GObject get data and GObject set data is that the GObject get data needs only the first two parameters, the object and the label data. So I'm going to pass them right here, and of course the button, we have it because it is provided from our function. At this point, we are going to say we can check against null if we want to, or we can do something more. We can say if GTK is label, so only if our label it is indeed a label, then I'm going to pass all this if statement right here. Let me format it. So at this point we said only and only the GTK is label, so our label it is indeed a label. Then we check our flag indeed to see if the flag it is false or not. Now let me compile it and run it. We do have a problem here and says expected. Yes, because I somehow I removed the semicolon from that line. And now let me click it. It's working fine, you see. And that's everything you need to know at this point. So let me talk about again. The GObject set data makes a connection between two objects or more. You can put more objects. You can put even the grid. So for example, if you want to do some crazy things, you don't need it. But if happens, you call the thing again and then you said grid. You see, I'm passing the grid, and now I'm going to say grid data, just to prove you that you can use as much or as many objects you want to. And here I'm going to say this time GTK grid, and then grid, and of course I'm going to copy all this thing right here because I don't want to type it again, and I'm going to change the label with the data, with the grid, sorry. So now we have the grid, and because we have the grid, I can prove you if GTK is grid. I need to give grid temp another name because we already have a grid right there. So I'm going to say if GTK is grid, our grid temp, then it should print us. It should print us true. G print the grid is whatever, true. Just to be sure that you understand. And of course I need to hide the main grid. Void, because I'm not using the grid anymore now. So I need to silence the compiler. We are not using anymore the grid. Only, oh, you know what? Actually, we are using it when we are checking here. But we are not using at all the grid. You see, we are using only the grid temp. So let me see if it's working. It should print the grid is true. And you see it's working. And because it's working, of course, we can now call all these things right here. I'm going to make a copy and clean a little bit the program right here. And I'm going to throw it inside here, format it. At this point, you see what we are doing now? We are basically getting two different objects from the button. You see, we are getting the grid and the label data, and we are putting them inside the label widget and grid. And once that we have them, we are checking if the grid is indeed a grid, and because it is, we are declaring a Boolean flag variable. We are setting to false, and then before we work with it, we are checking that our label it is indeed a label. You can make whatever you want to the checks, it belongs to you. Then we are working with GTK hide and GTK show. So basically, you see, you can do all kind of crazy stuffs. This implies the fact that a lot of people they will tell you can never pass as user data more than one object, which is wrong. They are right in some way, but 90% when someone says you cannot, you need to pass a structure or something, they have no idea about what they are talking about, because they are the old maybe the old programmers which they were used. I don't know, maybe in the first GTK 1.2 was different. I cannot say because I never programmed in that manner, but no, it's wrong. You can pass as much as many possible objects you want to, just after you connect them to an object an object which has a connection with others as well. I don't know if I spelled it right or if I formulated it right, but I think you understand what I'm trying to say. So just try to remember those things and you're fine. Anyway, now let us check what's the story with the last function. The last function, it is GObject steal data. This is very interesting function. GObject, sorry, steal data. Where are you? Steal data, right here. It says remove a specified datum, whatever, from the object's data association. Man, why they are using these names? I mean, it creates a lot of confusion. Without invoking the association destroy handler. Really? Okay, guys, I got to admit I have no idea exactly what they mean. Even if I know what this function does, even if I'm 100% sure that I understand this function, I still don't understand what the hell they are trying to explain with this description, whatever. Anyway, this function takes two parameters. The first one is the object, the second one is the case. So basically, what do you need to know? The only thing which you need to know, it is that this function, you see, we are setting the data right now, right here. Okay, now what this function exactly does, it is stealing, not retrieving, not getting, not, I don't know, it is stealing. So which means it gets this function, it gets the data which it finds in another object and steal it, take it. So that button, it does, like that object, like in this case our button, it doesn't have that data anymore. The pointer, the null pointer, it has it. So so that you understand better, because like I said, I always have problems with explaining. I'm going to show you. So G pointer, because as you can see, it says it needs a G pointer. G pointer, steal the data. I'm going to call it, and now I'm going to call the function. Man, what the hell they are describing here? Whatever. Maybe me is the problem, because maybe I don't know. So whatever. Okay, now I'm going to say GObject, and I'm going to pass this time the button, and I'm going to steal. You know what? I'm going to steal the grid data. Watch. I'm going to do something much more crazy, just to see that I'm right. Watch. I'm going to steal the data. So I'm going basically to copy this part, cut it, and pass it up here. Now, what we did until now, just to be sure, we made a connection between the label grid with the button, and of course we use a key like grid data and label data, so that we have a connection between them. Now I decide to steal this information, which is called grid data, from the button. Because I steal it, I'm not going to use it now, so I'm just going to cast to void for a second, just to prove you that I'm right. So now the compiler is satisfied because I'm not using it, I'm only steal it. So watch what happens with the program now, because I just steal the grid. We have no grid, guys. Let's see. Whoa, nothing's happens, you see? Why? Well, let's see. Let's go up and I said if GTK is grid, then wherever else, let us put now an else here, and I'm going to say G print we have no grid, someone just steal it, or whatever. I'm joking, whatever. It's your decision what you are typing to me. I want to be sure that you understand. I just steal that grid. Watch, you see? We have no grid, someone just steal it. You see? We have a thief here. Yes. So basically this does this function. Why it's important for this function? Well, it's important because maybe if you want to use another function where you are interested only in a particular information and you don't want to pass the whole button with all those information about that button, you are not care about it. Well, this is what this function does. Basically, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this thing right here, the GObject set data from our grid. You see, I'm copying, remove it. I'm going to delete this one as well, and I'm going to call again the GC data with our data grid, but this time watch, this time I'm not going to pass the grid because we need this information. Sorry guys, I need it because we don't have it, we cannot steal it. But this time I'm not going to let the grid, I'm going to pass the steal data. You see? So what we did now, we make the connection between the label and the grid with our button, and then we are stealing the grid information, the grid data. We are stealing it from the button, save it in one pointer, and then we are basically setting the data with this information instead of working with grid. Yes, the semicolon is missing, like always. And now watch. You see, it works fine and perfectly. Yes, it is working because it should work. If you think that it is complicated, just try to understand these things watching the video again if you are not sure. But I think that the things are now clear for you guys. This function, the GObject makes a connection between an object with another object, so that when you work with this object, you can retrieve or you can get a connection with this object. And to get this connection with this object from the button, you need a key, you need something, an identifier. So at that point we gave the label data and grid data to the button, and once that we have it, basically we can retrieve it. And once that we retrieve from the button with the GObject get data by passing its first parameter, the button itself, and of course then the identifier, our key, we are getting those information and we get access to those objects which we need to make some modification on them, and then we can work with them. At some point, if you decide to steal some information, which means if you want to get out the information from the button, like I did myself right now, and put it somewhere in another place, I put it again back in the button one, but you can put it wherever you want to. Then you call GObject steal data, and you pass the object from where you want to steal something. You give the key, the identifier, if you want to call it like this, or the key, whatever, from that object. And once that you give it, this function will retrieve you that object and save it in this pointer, and then the button itself doesn't have information anymore about that one. And now, because you have all the information right here, like I said, it was stolen, so it doesn't belong to the button anymore. You can then pass it wherever you want to and work with it, or you can put it back, like I decide to in this example, to put it back inside the button and then work with that. I hope you understand, guys, because I know it's a little bit complicated, but I think these examples were more than enough for you to get more information about how they are working and how do you need to work with these functions, because they are quite simple, isn't it? That being said, thank you guys for watching. If you like it, please subscribe, share with your friends and neighbors, and until next time, see you guys.